when adults and teenagers are learning a second language, at those very beginning stages, they are often doing a word by word translation, and it's a very slow process. So, for example, I have never been formally trained in Spanish. So if I want to say something in Spanish, so if I want to tell somebody, for example, that I cannot do something, I need to think about it word by word, translate the words, right? I, yo, okay, negative, no, what's the word for can? No puedo, right? And it's a very slow process at first. Now, with time, with more knowledge of words, and with repeated daily practice, it can get to the point where it is an automatic process. So, for example, my senior year of college, I lived with two other people. One of my roommates was born in Peru, and the other was a dual Mexican US citizen. And by the end of my time living with them, at least in my understanding of Spanish, it became automatic that I surprised myself where I could hear what they were saying and respond to them without a thought process in between or without a conscious thought process in between. Hello, I am Nicole Drabilla-Sprable, and this is Wildwood Teaching. At this point, you might be thinking, Nicole, what does learning a second language have to do with teaching in a nature-based preschool? Well, I'm going to tell you. You might know that I never planned to be a nature-based educator. It was just serendipity that I ended up with a first location that was on the edge of 364 acres of temperate rainforest, and I wanted to use the space. Right? But in the beginning, I had to do a translation. I had to take what I knew, right? Traditional indoor preschool, and translate it to outdoor nature-based learning. And really what I did was I took what I knew, right? We started out with our morning time inside, and we did our morning circle where I packed in, right, all of the academic things that children need to know right first thing in that morning. And then, we had traditional indoor centers with rotating change of activities, and then we had our snack time inside. And then outside, we went for probably a short hike before it was just, playtime outside. And so in those beginning stages, when I was thinking about activities, say, in our centers, I would think about what I already knew and then decide, okay, how do I make this a nature activity? So for example, everybody does the activity where you dip the marbles in paint and you put it in a tray and you roll it around the tray to get the paint to spread over the paper. So I remember one of my first things was, okay, I know this activity. How do I make it a nature activity? So I'm going to swap in acorns or pebbles or something else that rolls, that is a natural material, for that marble. Now I'm at a point where, we teach with nature, and that is automaticity, and I'm not translating anything, and I'm following the children's lead, and it's a very different program. But over the years, I'd have to say that those swaps have become automatic. And so today, I just want to share with you, if you are in the beginning stages, some of my four of my favorite natural swaps to take those traditional ideas and make them more nature-based. So, number one, talk about replacing paper with natural materials. So we all know what children need to do in early childhood with paper, right? They're practicing their scissor skills. They are practicing fine motor skills. So they are going through paper after paper where they are cutting fringe or cutting the teeniest little bits of paper, or they are putting some marks on a paper and then moving on to the next paper. And a lot of stuff ends up in the trash can. It's expensive and it feels like, even though we know that this is important for them to do in early childhood, it can feel like a lot of waste. So, introducing the leaf. Okay? Children can cut the leaf into as many different pieces as they want. They can make fringe, they can let it fall. If you're outside, they let it fall right to the ground. Almost anything that children can do with a piece of paper, they can do with the original source from the paper. One of our favorite things to do is to take these little hole punchers and punch holes from the leaves. And this has the added advantage in that you can then use those shapes that you have punched out, right? So I have these little squares, right? And that's a collage item. Or if you have just a regular hole puncher, right? That's your confetti, right? Instead of glitter that you can use and shake onto items with the glue. And you might not have leaves, right? You might be like me right now where it's this time of year and we don't have a lot of leaves, a lot of usable leaves on the ground. That's okay. Other natural materials that can work, right? You've got your tree slices, you've got pieces of bark, you've got pine cones, you have river rocks, and children can use paint on them. Children can use chalk on them. Number two way that you can swap in a natural material is that you can also use many of those natural materials that I just talked about, right, as building materials, right? So you can certainly go out and buy tree blocks, but children can stack sticks on top of things. They can use them to make bridges. You can mix and match. You can add in the rocks, the tree slices, the sticks, the pine cones to your block area and let the children decide how they want to use them. Third swap. Take the sand in the sandbox, the water in the water table. These are already natural materials, so go ahead and use them. But you can also swap them out for soil, mud, ice, snow. I mean, it was life-changing for me when I realized that pretty much anything that children can do with sand in the sandbox, they can also do with snow or soil, right? They can fill and dump. They can wet it and use it to mold. They can use it as a base for their storytelling. So put in those acrylic animals, put in those flowers, whatever you have, and let children use it for dramatic play. And bring out molds, bring out the muffin tins, and that snow, that mud can be used for your kitchen area. Bring out the Tonka trucks, and children can roll it along the mud, the snow. They can fill the bases of those trunks, the dumps, the beds. That's the word I'm looking for. The beds of the dump trucks, right? They can fill it and dump it. They can use those if they're molding it, right? They can use those molds for sculpture, three-dimensional art, right? And you can mix and match, right, depending on the weather. Right? So you can use ice cubes, right, if it's cold out. If it's hot out, make some adobe bricks and use those either for your building material or in your sensory area. Go big. Right? Use branches and stumps instead of the little tree blocks. All right, my fourth swap is not really a swap where you're swapping in nature, but it is a swap for nature. And that is, I am recommending using reusable tools, items, replacing those whenever you can in your classroom. So instead of paper plates and plastic forks, flatware, reusable plates that you're sticking in the dishwasher or sanitizing by hand. Um, Instead of paper towels, each child could have their own color coded towel, or we use just towels and we collect them in a bin and put them in the washing machine, right? Instead of individually packaged snacks, we have the children assist in making our snacks and we serve them family style on those individual plates, so that we are reducing the packaging waste. So try out one of those four swaps if you're at the beginning stages of using nature, right? Replace the paper in your art material with whatever you have available. Bring in more natural building materials, whether that's small scale or large scale. Right? Mix it up in your sensory area and use snow, mud, ice as much as you can, in addition to the sand and water. And then try some reusable materials for the kind of the practical part of running your preschool as much as you can. If you've got other swaps, please share them with us. You can comment on underneath this video. You can connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram. You can respond to me individually through my weekly newsletter. We'd love to hear what you are up to. We love to learn from each other. And then join me here next week for another episode of Wildwood Teaching. I will see you there.